This is a story of cowboys, railroads, and angry farmers. In the early 1800s, many people moved out west looking for farmland and other valuable goodies. But what they also found was cattle. There were thousands and thousands of free-roaming wild cattle all across the countryside. So what ended up happening was large groups of men, largely young men of various backgrounds, would go down into the southwest where these large herds of cattle were, and they would grab these cattle and bring them up further north to the railroads. On the way, though, the cows would stop and graze at many different places. Like, they would stop in outskirts of towns, they would stop in farmers' fields, just anywhere that there was grass to feed the cattle. And the cattle, they didn't really mind much because they were going place to place finding good grass to eat. But who did mind were the farmers. The farmers who were growing that grass, growing the crops, growing the corn, needed the harvest to be bountiful that year because there were many unbountiful years that often preceded. They got particularly angry. So a lot of them were looking for a way to get the cowboys and get the cows off their land. So some petitioned railroads to go further south and meet the cowboys earlier. And some railroads did that, but in other places, it just wasn't quite feasible for the railroad companies and cowboys to, make those demands. So my friend here, Joseph Glidden, comes from Charlestown, New Hampshire, and he moves to DeKalb, Illinois. He starts farming on a 600-acre plot, and he's having a good time. Well, he notices the plight of all these farmers who are having a tough time, and he thinks, I could probably do something about that. So he gets working on a way to maybe try and keep the cattle off of his land and off of the land of others. So what he does is he takes some wire, makes these little corkscrew kind of shaped spurs, and he threads 2 other longer wires through that and twists it off so that you have one spur every 6 to 12 inches. So with the spurs secured in place, the cows don't really like running through the spur wire because it's not very comfortable. And what this does is eventually there will become an unbroken line or nearly unbroken line of barbed wire that'll run east to west, blocking the cowboys off from the railroads. And for the farmers, this is all well and dandy. But for the people in the north who were relying on that constant supply of leather, it really messes up some businesses. And for the cowboys, it completely destroys their way of life. The cowboys weren't necessarily beneficial for the towns that they went through, so they would often be doing crimes and whatnot. Not usually the major ones, but they would do some crime, steal some stuff, maybe some not great things to women sometimes. But what this barbed wire did is it ended the incentive for cowboys and the traffic of those cows north and south. So with that ended, you kind of end that era of lawlessness that the West had for the longest time. That's like the Wild West is over at that point. It makes it so that it feels like all of the United States is the same thing. See, if we hadn't had Joseph Glidden and his barbed wire, we honestly might still have some vestigial Wild West tendencies. Like, we might still have cattle drives because they weren't the most efficient way to raise cattle, but they didn't require constant 24/7 ranching. Like, we might not have as successful beef farms and whatnot because of that, because, well, if we're getting in all those cows from the Southwest, I mean, Hereford ranching is pretty efficient, but it can't beat nearly free meat. And like, really, it might just have been the single reason that the Wild West ended is Joseph Glidden moving out further west and making some cheap wire. Really is an interesting thing to think about, isn't it? I suppose it is.